Hong Kong and the Philippines, Japanese forces pushed out a defensive perimeter across the Pacific, occupying many islands and archipelagos. After the Battle of Midway in June 1942, Japan found itself on the defensive as US, British, Australian and New Zealand forces began the fight back across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. By the first half of 1944, the Allies had captured from the Japanese the British Solomon Islands, the Gilberts, Marshalls and Papua New Guinea. But the Japanese were still firmly ensconced in the Philippines, the Caroline Islands, the Palau Islands and the Marianas. The US island-hopping campaign in the Pacific envisioned cutting through these defenses to snatch the Marianas, which would enable US B-29 superfortresses to come within bombing range of the Japanese mainland. It was a complete foul-up. So many Japanese aircraft were shot down that US pilots took to calling the battle the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The Japanese also lost 3 precious aircraft carriers. Japan's defeat at sea meant that Saipan was now isolated and could expect no relief. But General Saito was determined to make the Americans pay a hefty price in blood for the island. Concentrating his surviving forces, the island's highest point, Mount Topotchau, the Japanese turned the volcanic caves into bunkers, moving around unseen and usually attacking at night. The fighting
estimated the strength of the Allies in Guadalcanal. A nighttime assault from the front on Alligator Creek, the eastern side of the Marine Lunga perimeter, on August 21st was devastating for Japan. Only 128 of the 917 Japanese and await further instructions and hopefully reinforcements. By August 23rd, General Kiyotaki Kawaguchi and his unit had arrived at Truk for transport to Guadalcanal. Due to the Allied destruction of a troop convoy in a previous battle, the Japanese decided to transport the soldiers to Rabadul. From there, they were taken aboard destroyers to the Imperial Navy's base in the Shortland Islands. The ships could make the trip from there to Guadalcanal and back in one night, reducing the probability of an Allied air attack. Still, the heavy military equipment and supplies could not be transported along with the soldiers, and had to be part of separate high-speed destroyer runs that the Japanese The tide began turning as heavy artillery fire was used by the Marines against their enemy.
against Japan. 1,500 miles to targets, and 1,500 miles back from bases at Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. Here, 21st Bomber Command concentrated its massive air power and planned the ultimate crushing defeat of Japan. It's like taking off in Mexico for targets in Canada. The 314th is airborne. 145 planes, 1 minute apart, 67 tons each.